Hello and welcome to the Deep Down Bear podcast. My name's Sean and joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boffman. Boffman, how are we?
Well. If it isn't my old friend and occasional nemesis, Sean Albert Carroll. I'm
Thomas Albert
How
Carroll.
are you? Thomas Albert Carroll. Too many names.
Is this after we booked the flights you saw the ticket name on the tickets or something? Oh no, my license. And you were like, what's TA stand for?
Yeah. You were very pleased to have gotten the blue license instead of the yellow license or the red license.
Well, that's actually a funny little story in itself, and I think we should say that before we start talking about the news, is that I got my license, the little piece of plastic came in the mail. Yes, I'm slack to get it, but I was slow to get it, thanks. I'm like, cool. Got in my car, took off the P plates, got absolutely hammered, then got behind the wheel.
Yeah.
Obviously
a time-honoured ritual. For legal purposes, that story is untrue.
Just another thing boomers ruined for us. And then, just driving along, and then I showed someone my license, so they're like, oh.
What, whilst you're driving along?
No, this separate time. I showed someone my license, so they're like, oh, so the expiry date's on the 19th of September, 10 years from now, 7 years from now. And I'm like, oh, hang on, maybe I should have read the piece of paper that came with the license. So I've got the piece of paper still here. And it says, Sean, your license starts on the 19th of September. So I've taken off my P's, thrown them in the bin, and now I'm just sort of chancing it for the next 18 days and I don't get pulled over.
That's a bit premature.
Yeah, why would they send it to me 3 weeks early?
That is a bit rogue. Although I guess they can't send it to you on the exact day because they got to send it through Ozpost, which is unreliable, as we know.
But you'd rather be late with that thing than early. But anyway.
You'd definitely rather be early because you would assume that people would read the letter. I think that's a pretty safe assumption.
Wow, okay, I'm bad.
I, for years and years and years, didn't realise it was 3 years on green peas. And so I'd done 1 year and 11 months on green peas. And I was going around telling everyone I'm getting my full licence next month.
Yeah.
And I was like, can't wait to just go to the pub and have a couple and drive home. Can't wait to not have to worry about it the morning after. This is going to be amazing. I'm ready for this. Telling everyone who would listen. And then someone said to me, oh, so you've been on your P's for 3 years. And I was like, nah. What are you talking about? And so I realised about 4 days before I thought I was getting my licence, which was a bit of a difficult pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And I had to slum it on the green peas for another year. But boy, was it worth it. Because having your full licence and, like I said, being able to go to the pub and have two and drive home, whoa, that's a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, I've still never done that. I actually don't have my licence yet.
Yeah, come the 19th of September, you got to do it.
I just can't really be bothered. Public transport's so cheap.
We're going to Sydney at the end of the month,
Yeah.
where you'll have your full licence, and we're renting a minivan for us and all of our friends.
Yeah.
You should go to the pub, have a couple, and then drive home.
You're just trying to make me the Deso.
You can be the Deso.
Well, since you and I are driving the start of that trip to get the car, maybe we've already used our cycle of the 8 people in the car.
What does that even mean?
Well, how many trips are we going to make in that van? Maybe 8? There's 8 of us.
Yeah,
you and I would have done our 2 at the start. Then we're done for the next 6 trips.
Oh, I don't reckon we're going to rotate it. I reckon that'd be a nightmare for the insurance.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Anyway, we can discuss the logistics off air. But maybe we should have maybe when we get into Sydney at 8 a.m, we should have an airport beer and then you can drive.
Sure.
Your shot?
Yeah, no, of course, for whatever reason. So, before we do get into the podcast, we will talk about an article that is on the deep2.com. I can't believe it's that simple. Written by a friend of the program, Alessio Conte, titled, We Know Right From Wrong, Does the NBA? Now, he's talking about the Miles Bridges situation, comparing it to the Deshaun Watson situation, and just sort of a follow-up to an article that Aless wrote at the start of last season when Jason Kidd and Chauncey Billups got another job in the NBA, despite their track record off the court, and partially because of their track record on the court. So, yeah, check it out. Do you want to say anything before we just say go read the article?
Well, firstly, go read the article. It's really good. But I think Aless does a great job of examining the sporting and broader societal context of specifically domestic violence and sexual assault issues in professional sport. And we have seen, various, you mentioned the coaches from last year, Deshaun Watson this year, various powerful people who have grossly abused their positions to commit actual, what would be, defined anywhere outside of the court of law as an actual crime. None of them, it's important to say, have actually been criminally charged, except for Jason Kidd, convicted wife beater. We can say that. But what are pretty obviously like serious crimes against women, and have been shepherded into positions of power. And yeah, it will be really interesting to see what the NBA decides to do. Obviously, the NBA being a progressive league with the Miles Bridges case. If you want to hear a more in-depth breakdown of that case specifically, we pretty much did a podcast on it a couple of weeks ago, so you can go and find that. But the article is really wonderful, and it's a great follow-up, like you said, on something that Les wrote a year ago that hasn't actually really changed all that much, which is somewhat disheartening. But I digress. Go and read it. And before we get on to actual news, did you play basketball last night?
No, I didn't.
You didn't play basketball last night?
I had the night off. Had work late.
Oh, you worked late? How'd the team go?
I don't know.
Okay, well, you're obviously real plugged in on that one.
Well, it says on the run sheet, don't mention it.
No, but I thought it was a bit of like a, don't even ask.
No, it was
like something either went really great or really bad.
No.
You can ask me about netball if you want.
I sort of want to get into the podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm the one that's got to go somewhere. I'm the one that's got appointments after this. No, since you asked, I played 2 games last night, and they were probably 2 of the best games I've ever played in. Like, I was very happy with my performance, but I mean, more generally, the first game was 27-23, which is 50 goals for those who are great at quick math, which is pretty much unheard of from like a netball game. Like, if one team is scoring 27 or 23, the other team's usually getting blown out. So for it to be so like well executed and so competitive was really, really good. And then in the second game, I played with the Pink Pirates. Shout out to Pink Pirates. And we played against a really, really good team. They were excellent. They had this behemoth up front, and so they just got easy looks whenever they wanted, which made it really difficult. And our goal defense, Ben, shout out Ben Fro, he just did an absolutely incredible job. But it was great fun. It was like 21-19, I reckon. So again, another like high scoring, really well executed game. Like one for the purists.
Yeah, a bit of a Houston versus Washington Wizards 2 years ago.
Now, speaking of one for the purists, should we talk about the RJ Barrett Knicks extension?
We should. So, since we last recorded a podcast, RJ Barrett and the New York Knicks have agreed to a 4-year, $120 million extension. The news coming from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN. This is particularly noteworthy because Woj followed up his tweet with the reply/report saying that Leon Rose had given the Knicks and the Jazz a deadline of Monday, being Tuesday our time, to say, all right, a deal is going to get done, and if not, we've got this deal ready to go for RJ Barrett, and we're just going to sign him to that extension. Now, this doesn't mean he can't get traded, but for the rest of the season, he will be, under or eligible or whatever it may be for the poison pill provision, which means that he might only be getting paid $12 million for his salary, the last year of his rookie deal, but he'll be getting paid an average off everything that 4-year deal would pay him. So while Utah might be taking on Utah might only be receiving... The Knicks might be giving up 11. Yeah. Utah only are going to receive something around the range of 20, early 20s. So it just becomes too hard. I say Bobby Marks did find a deal that does work.
Yeah, it doesn't actually become too hard necessarily. It complicates it for sure.
But this is more of a line of demarcation to say, okay, you fucked around too long.
Yeah,
RJ Barrett's off the table.
It definitely is that.
What did you think when you saw this deal?
You are not going to believe it. Considering that it's the Knicks and considering that it's Rowan Barrett. But I actually think it's great value.
Oh, I think it is actually great value.
I think it's fantastic value. Because it's actually, I think it's actually 108 million guaranteed, and the last 12 is in incentives, possible incentives.
That's sexy.
So 4 years, 108 averages out to about 27.
Yeah.
Actually, why am I being modest? It is exactly 27. 27 million a year for RJ Barrett is pretty good, and I've been thinking about this, since the news dropped. It's like, what's his ceiling? And I just don't think his ceiling is like 3-time All-Star. I think his ceiling is like less than that. I'm absolutely not convinced he's going to be a really excellent player.
Well, could I ask a question I like to ask people whenever you're thinking about this range? Do you reckon at the end, once it's all said and done, will he have a better or worse career than Pascal Siakam?
Worse.
Okay, cool.
Worse. I think I'm pretty confident in saying worse because Siakam's not for nothing. He's an all NBA
a real
player
all-star,
and a three-time all-star. I've been thinking about like what's his ceiling. I think if his ceiling, and I'm saying ceiling for this comparison specifically, is his ceiling like Andrew Wiggins this year?
Yeah, like a bit more offense, and like I don't see him getting there on defense.
I mean, he's not going to be like the bigger wing defender that Andrew Wiggins is.
Yeah.
He's not going to be taking on like the LeBron and sliding up to the 4 kind of assignments. But just in terms of being that wing defender who profiles as potentially elite and who can chip in a supporting role really, really well.
Yeah,
struggles when too much is asked of him, which he has.
Yeah,
because he has not really proven to have a sustainable offensive game at all. Like, I firmly think that his production, as it is a result of opportunity and not like excellence.
Yeah.
But if his ceiling is like last season's Andrew Wiggins, which to be clear is not an all-star player, even though he was an all-star.
Do you want to define him as? I know he might have been the second, but the third best player on a championship team.
Third best player on a Final Four team, and we'll go with that. I think it's definitely possible, and to be paying $27 million for that type of player, or at least a player with that sort of upside, is great. And even if he doesn't end up hitting that level, and he's just like a good starter, in a few years, like $27 million for a good starter will just be like fine. That'll be just completely okay. So I think it's a really good move for the Knicks.
Yeah. And we talked about it last week where you hear a lot of these dudes when we're talking about tanking that just have that draft pedigree and they just eventually get paid just because they were drafted so high. So this is, a little bit of a haircut for a dude who was the 3rd overall pick and he was in that conversation with Zion and maybe even Ja. But, pretty good that they were able to get a discount on a dude who, if he had gone in and said, I'm not taking anything less than 140 mil, he could probably eventually just force their hand. But good on him for doing it, and good on the Knicks for actually being able to get it.
Well, I'd say rather than him taking a haircut, it's just
being properly paid.
Yeah, being properly paid. Like he obviously is not a max level player. A player.
And also, you and I look good for slagging him off for the last 3 years as well.
Yeah, well, we always look good. We've never, despite bursting onto the scene in 2019, hammering the 2019-20 Sacramento Kings as our on the rise team. Since then, we haven't been wrong about anything.
Well, we did say the 2023 conference finals will be between the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls, which
hasn't
been wrong yet.
What's the year? Yeah, we've still got a full
calendar year,
a full season. I for one am buying into DeJounte Murray and the Hawks. All right, well, that was a joke because I'm not.
RJ Barrett is the first Knicks first-round pick entering the final year of his rookie deal to sign an extension in 23 years.
This stat's been going around. Obviously, that's pretty cooked. That just goes to show that they've
haven't drafted well or just been trading for
haven't drafted well and have mismanaged the players that they have drafted and have not had a sustainable draft strategy. But Mitchell Robinson signed with them last year, and although he didn't technically sign a rookie contract extension, he did made it to free agency after his rookie deal and then re-signed immediately.
But Dante, that's not a fucking headline. Come on, man.
Yeah,
you know yourself.
I want a bit of journalistic integrity from here.
Get out of here.
I was reading someone from The Ringer who, to their credit, did actually mention that technically.
He's not the first rookie to sign an extension.
Technically, Mitchell Robinson actually signed, but then he mentioned it twice in the little spiel, and I was like, if you have to mention it twice just to get it in there, then your fake stat is probably not worth printing.
Man, nothing gets past Dante. What about Mitchell Robinson losing the rat tail? What are your thoughts on that?
I got no thoughts on Mitchell Robinson. I got none.
Yeah, that was a little Brisbane Lions joke. So let's talk about the other half of this news. Obviously, the Knicks are in the Donovan Mitchell rumours.
Before we sorry to interrupt you. That's amazing podcasting. Should we talk seriously about this though? You floated this idea in the group chat, and this is something that we have done with this specific team before. Actually, twice before. As well as doing it with Ben Simmons. After this
segment,
are we going to put an embargo on the Donovan Mitchell Knicks stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was kind of pissing me off.
Yeah. We've for any listeners who are not familiar with this, we have in the past embargoed the Knicks. Knicks news from being news in inverted commas from being discussed until something actually happens, because the New York media machine, my guy Stephen Bondi, he is absolutely pumping it out.
And let's not knock Mark Berman.
No, Mark Berman his name needs to be in there. But they have a preternatural talent for turning nothing into annoying news.
Yeah. And can I just say, I'm going to mention 2 newses that we're going to discuss. There were 4/5 to actually write down. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm already not talking about that, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah. So truly like an unbelievable volume of almost worthless news reports.
Good money if you can get it.
But you know what? Knicks get clicks, so shout out to the boys. But okay, glad we're on the same page. We will be. This is putting this down in stone. As Moses carved the commandments. We'll be embargoing the Donovan Mitchell Knicks conversation, and we'll come back to it when if Donovan Mitchell gets traded to the Knicks.
Or unless there's a concrete offer that they say, okay, this is our final offer. So we will not talk about it until something actually happens.
Yeah.
But let's talk about it.
But diet starts tomorrow, so we'll talk about it now.
So obviously talking about the fact that Leon Rose said that he had a deadline for Monday to make this trade. He says, look, nothing's happened. Let's move on. I think the offer that was on the table had multiple first-round picks, Obadiah Toppin and Quentin Grimes, and RJ Barrett, and they said, no, that's not going to happen. So the news report from Mark Berman of the New York Post, the aforementioned, says that the Knicks are still, quote, hopeful, unquote, that they can complete a trade for Mitchell without RJ. So this is obviously right after that thing. And then another quote from Woj of ESPN says the Jazz aren't seriously discussing any Mitchell deals with anyone else outside of the Knicks. And in that report, he had a nice little tidbit, which I thought, which it says that the Utah Jazz do not want Evan Fournier in any deal. And the Jazz say, if you want to throw Evan Fournier in the deal, you have to pick up the phones, Leon Rose, and ask 28 other teams to find someone who's going to take Evan Fournier's money.
Just a quick disclaimer: don't Google it. Evan Fournier, do not Google it. So they don't want to take Evan Fournier? He's got 2 years, 35 left.
And also, you
will not be good for the next 2 years.
No, the joke is, my brother in Christ, you signed him to the contract as well. But if you're trading a superstar to a team for future capital, every deal we've ever seen has included some bad money coming back in return. That's simply what has to happen.
Also, not for nothing, you could definitely just flip Evan Fournier at the deadline for 2 seconds. You 100%, yeah, 100%, bro. Anyone with 2 legs at the deadline is getting flipped to a contender for 2 seconds. 100%.
I don't think so. Do you really? So let's look at how much money Evan Fournier, don't Google, has left in his deal. Fournier, so he's got 3 years remaining in his deal. Sorry, that's a team option. Yeah, that's not getting picked up. Sorry. Yeah. All right, 18, then 18.8 next year, 18.9.
Evan Fournier literally got poached by the Celtics 2 seasons ago in that exact formula. He got poached at the trade deadline for 4 seconds from wherever the fuck
he's only
God-forsaken place he was before that.
Orlando.
He was in Orlando, and he got poached for 4 seconds. And obviously he was shit with the Celtics.
Yeah, he had COVID, and there were some really unfortunate
things. But
Evan
Fournier has a track record previous to the last 18 months.
I think you're talking Evan Fournier up too much.
He's got a skill set. I'm just saying there's going to be some stupid team like the Lakers is going to be like, oh, we need a bit of wing scoring and we didn't end up bringing Buddy Hield in. Evan Fournier, 2 seconds, done. Or Evan Fournier, a bit of rubbish, done.
Well, I mean, from the Lakers' point of view, it pretty much has to be Russ.
All I'm saying is it's mental for Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz to be like, nah, Evan Fournier can't be in the trade.
I agree with Danny Ainge in this scenario. I don't think he's positive value in that deal because maybe if he's got 1 year remaining, yes, of course, okay, maybe he's positive value there. But I reckon if the Jazz get him, they're stuck with him for a year. Which
what does that matter?
Exactly. Well, that's what I said at the start.
If you think he's shit, then he's shit, and he's helping you to lose games.
Yeah. Which is what I said at the start. But in terms of positive value, I don't think he is that.
Yeah.
So, do you think a Donovan Mitchell trade will be completed to the New York Knicks after this extension?
I'm going to say yes. Not because I think the Knicks can offer a great trade haul, because I don't think they actually can. Because, their picks, awesome. Historically, Knicks picks have been quite valuable.
Yeah.
But this appears to be a Knicks team that would be a 5, 6, 7 playoff type team. So the picks are moderately valuable, but not really. They're more valuable to a team that wants to package picks and trade for another superstar, which doesn't look like the Jazz want to do just yet. And also the prospects that they include are mostly shit.
Yeah.
In fact, almost all shit.
Obi Toppin and Quentin Grimes, I don't think you and I think he's a star. Either of them are starters on good teams.
No, I mean Grimes we haven't seen enough to know really what he is, but yeah, I would say that's unlikely. Quickly, the shine is off, the bloom is off the rose with Quickly to some extent. So even if you're throwing him in there, it's not very good, the offer, I would say. But there's a report that we've got from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN that the Jazz aren't seriously discussing deals with anyone other than the Knicks. And the reason for that is because no one else has the desire and the assets to really bring him in. Because maybe Miami, then you're in the same boat of you're taking Tyler Hero back and you're going to have to pay Tyler Hero, which Tyler Hero, Utah, Mormon, I mean, maybe there's something there. But Tyler Hero, the basketball player, getting paid how much Tyler Hero, the basketball player, wants to get paid is, I would say, negative value. Where else are you really looking? That there's someone who can give you the historical Gobert level haul that you want to compare it to.
That's exactly right, because you probably aren't going to get the Rudy Gobert level haul, because Rudy Gobert was an overpay. They got four first round picks, a dude who had just been drafted in Walker Kessler, and then Leandro Balmora, who was the draft pick from the previous year, Patrick Beverley, who was just traded for positive value. They got so much in that deal, and maybe Tim Connolly has just absolutely flipped the trade market out the window. And I saw this funny tweet right after KD said he's going to return to Brooklyn, which is I can't believe Tim Connolly has just destroyed the trade market so much that everyone expects all this stuff that Brooklyn were just four first round picks for Rudy Gobert. We want more than that for KD because KD is better. So maybe Tim Connolly has sort of ruined this for the Jazz, and the Jazz are going to be well, of course we're going to get another big haul.
I think the difference though between those two scenarios, comparing Brooklyn trading KD and the Jazz with this trade, is that Brooklyn decided / were forced into wanting a return that would help them compete now. Because even if they pivoted fully into the tank and took a whole bunch of picks and traded KD, traded Kyrie, they don't own their own picks. Houston owns their picks. So tanking for them is useless unless they somehow get lucky and another team the team whose picks they give up also is shit. Tanking for them is pretty much out of the question. Whereas it's not really for Utah. Utah don't have the same desire to need to get players back who can help them right now. In fact, they don't have that desire at all. They're disincentivized to get players back, which means you can actually access a broader range of offers. You can take an offer like this that's half picks, that's half, possible prospects. If you maybe take three recent first round picks on and one of them pops for you. There you go. Plus all the picks that you get that end up being in the 10 to 20 range. There you go. That, you get one good starter plus a couple of role players and 3 firsts. That's historically, at least given at least in the last 10 years, that's probably about the return you would get for a mid-20s all-star who's never been an All-NBA player.
Yeah. And also, I think if you're Danny Ainge and you want to make this New York trade and you're like, we have to do New York, I think the best thing you can do is just be like, New York, give us, like, I don't want your fucking protected Charlotte pick. I don't want your 2023 pick because, you know, you're probably going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, we want your picks.
We want your picks in 2029. Like, if I were Danny Ainge, I would sacrifice a couple of those Charlotte picks and a couple of their own early picks and just say, just give me 2029 and there's a non-0% chance that's the number one pick.
Well, that reminds me of a conversation that, and we are loath to do this on this podcast, but a conversation between Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo on the Bill Simmons podcast when this news broke. And Bill Simmons astutely, which is not something that we usually say, mentioned that were he in Danny Ainge's shoes, one of the first things that he'd be doing is kind of like coming up with a short list of teams whose draft picks are usually historically valuable and targeting teams like the Knicks, like the Kings, like the Magic, that not only are currently bad or not very good, not only have a path to continuing to be bad or not very good, but also historically are like mismanaged and inept franchises, and he'd be targeting those sorts of teams for their draft picks. So you would look at a 2025, 2027, and 2029 New York Knicks first round draft pick, top 5 protected, as extremely valuable, because you would say
it could be Jamal Murray.
It could be, exactly. You could be looking at the 6 through 8 pick here. Which is not only valuable to you in 2025, 27, 29, but if you decide you want to pivot into the trade, that's valuable to the rest of the league, because the rest of the league sees what you see as well. The rest of the league has been paying attention to the league for the last 25 years and knows that the Knicks are a regular tire fire. So, you know, like those picks do have value, and I just keep coming back to like where else is he going? Like, what's the market?
Yeah.
Because he's not he's not that like KD, like contenders bring him in and it's like you're a super contender, you're a super squad.
It's like all of a sudden you're just a little bit exciting.
Yeah, well, like what's a team that could bring him in and could elevate themselves from
I think Miami.
Miami is the one that comes to mind for me as well, but like none of the other contenders are really like looking to be. Boston's not, like the Clippers aren't, the Nuggets aren't.
No one is.
There's no one else who, you know, and the bad teams, I think quite rightly, are identifying that bringing Donovan Mitchell in is not like bringing KD in. You're not going to go from 13th to 6th. You're going to go from 13th to 10th.
And he's a floor raiser, so your pick gets worse.
Yeah.
Should we wrap up this discussion by... I think that the worst possible outcome here is that he enters training camp and he starts the season with this team because they say, no, we need 50 first-round picks. But what is your prediction? Because we're not going to talk about this until something happens. What's your prediction? Who is he playing for on opening night? We'll start with you, Dante.
I'm going the Jazz. I think it lags.
Me too. I think it's the Jazz, and it's awkward because like he's going to be running out there with Jared Vanderbilt and Walker Kessler, and I think they'll like be above 500 for the first 20 games of the season.
I wouldn't even be surprised if there was a bit of right hammy soreness, to be honest.
Nah, not in the first 20 games. That's the last 20 games sort of thing.
No.
Oh, you reckon Donovan himself will pull a James Harden or pull a Ben Simmons?
I think by mutual consent, because Utah doesn't want him out there because they don't want to be good. It's straight out of the OKC playbook.
That's bad.
And Mitchell doesn't need to go out there and like prove anything. He's got his resumes for this trade is built. Like, you know what you're getting. He doesn't need to go out there and risk himself. He doesn't need to go out there and like chase stats. He doesn't need to prove that he can do anything. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a bit of mutual consent, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, not feeling quite right, going to see out the next 17 games.
So who loses from that? Everyone, because he's a good basketball player and we don't get to watch him.
I won't be watching the Jazz anyway, so I can live without that.
All right, let's move on to another piece of news / not news, but it's it's relevant because we're in the thicket of the NBA offseason, and as ESPN does every offseason, they bring out their annual offseason survey. That's a lot of off-season in the one sentence. But this was a story by Tim Bontemps, but it happens every year. So this year they polled 15 anonymous coaches, scouts, executives, and just asked them questions about the off-season, questions about who the best player in the world is, questions about some of the topical things like where will Kevin Durant play on day one, and where will Donovan Mitchell play on day one of the NBA season. And a lot of it is chalk, a lot of it is just running through the the generic NBA questions, and they are generic NBA answers. But there are a few things that I just wanted to mention, and maybe we can rapid fire through a couple of these, but maybe we can actually have a good discussion on some of them. We'll start off with the first question, which was asking these 15 people who the best player in the world is right now, and 11 votes were cast in the name of Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I'll mention that 3 names were cast in Steph Curry, 1 name was cast for LeBron James, none for Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. What did you think when you saw these results?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yeah. All right, rapid fire, let's keep going. Who will be the best player in the next 5 years? Giannis had 7, Luka had 6, Jay Tatum, 2 votes. Man, the joke is better in my head. Any thought? Don't just get yourself, Sean. That. You're actually funny.
If you make the joke, you need to own it, both for yourself and for the podcast listeners.
All right, so
commit to it, own it, do it.
Hey, Nice Carly, pull that one out so I sound much more fluent. Any thoughts here on Giannis being the best player in 5 years above Luka?
I would have definitely thought Luka would be the more popular answer, considering that he's played 4 seasons and been All-NBA first team 3 times, and he's 23. Giannis, 27 years old, 1 year older than Jokic, who didn't get any votes. So if Jokic is being excluded on the principle that he's 32 in 5 years, Giannis is going 32, 33 as well. Jokic won 2 MVPs. How many MVPs Giannis won?
2.
That's pretty interesting that Jokic didn't get any votes.
It is weird, but again, it is a results-based league, and Luka is fucking 19 years old. So Giannis winning a title, and Jason Tatum obviously getting to the big dance.
Didn't see the sign on the door that said "No sloppy fat boys."
Well, what's Luka?
Nah, Luka's not. He's something, but he's not a sloppy fat boy.
Who will be the MVP this season? 5 votes, G. Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic. This is all quite run-of-the-mill, but 1 vote for Ja Morant and 1 vote for Steph Curry, which I was a bit like, man, Steph Curry with the glaze of winning a title to come in next season.
Glaze is like the worst word you could have
shine.
Glaze is there's actually like
a sexual element to glaze.
Making me think like something I don't want to be thinking.
I had donuts at work yesterday.
Okay.
I mean, Steph Curry, through the first 18 games of the year, he was the MVP.
Yeah, and how long's the season?
We were 18-2.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long the season is. It only matters if you win the last game of the season, Dante.
Yeah.
And we also won that one. Yeah. 9-1, the Golden State Warriors started off. And it was actually a quote from some talking head who said, 9-1, the Warriors will not be. And all of Warriors Twitter retweeted it as soon as we hit 9-1. Who will be the best rookie right now in 5 years? Paolo Banchero, 6 votes. Chet Holmgren, 6 votes. Jaden Ivey, 2. Keegan Murray, 1. I would love to know which fucking King Scout is voting for Keegan Murray. But no votes for Jabari Smith Jr. Thoughts and feelings on that one?
No thoughts, no feelings. Because he's the one out of the top 3 that has the least I think absolute superstar potential.
I mean, he was the 3rd pick for a reason. Is he the 3rd best player in a 3-player draft?
Banchero and Holmgren, you can easily see how they could become all NBA level players. And Jabari Smith, you can see how he'd be a great 3-point shooter who plays awesome defense, but that's not necessarily a superstar.
Yeah. I mean, there's also always a thing where it's there's always at least one guy in the teens, whether it's Giannis or Donovan Mitchell or someone who just pops, who's that guy going to be in the teens, or maybe a Shaden Sharp type. I don't want to have that discussion with you, Dante. I apologise.
You don't want to have a shade and sharp discussion with me?
No, we've fucking got places to be.
Yeah, well, yes, we certainly do.
We'll skip past that next question. All right, now this is the juicy ones. These are the two I actually want to talk about. So, which team had the best off-season? And 6 votes were cast to the Boston Celtics. Second place was tied between the Jazz, 76ers, and then 1 vote each to the Hawks, the Clippers, the Knicks, the Kings, and the Wizards. Why'd the fucking Wizards get 1 vote for best off-season?
Because they let Tommy Shepard vote for himself.
But 1 vote in terms of, like, the question is who had the best off-season in the NBA, and you said Washington Wizards. Someone else just said Sacramento Kings, but well, what else jumps out to you here?
I would have expected the Clippers to get a few more votes.
Really?
Yeah.
I think like someone like the Utah Jazz, who were able to get such a haul and maybe even a daylight robbery, and then to turn around and flip Patrick Beverley, like, they probably deserve more than 2 votes than that. Philadelphia, I mean, we'll find out 12 months from now, but it might be blatant tampering in terms of James Harden. But at the moment, it looks like good off-season off-season moves.
Yeah, we shall see.
I love the D'Anthony Melton move, but I don't think it makes it the best off-season in the whole entire NBA.
Yeah, I think if you conceptually expanded the Clippers' trade deadline activity to be included in this exercise, do you think that the Clippers would jump up the rankings? Bringing in
Rocco
and Norm Powell.
They've got so many lineups they can do. They might have, well, I said he was the best coach in the whole entire NBA at the end of the year in Ty Lue, and they've just got so much flexibility.
Best coach in the whole entire NBA.
Yeah, we had that discussion. You should listen to the Deep Jam podcast.
Coach of the year.
Steve Kerr 2.0.
Oh, that's crazy. It's Monty Williams. He's the 2022 Coach of the Year, NBA.
But at some point, the whole personality...
Statistically speaking, Monty Williams is the best coach in the NBA.
Monty Williams was a make-up for the bad Tibbs call.
So he should be 2 in a row. You will not get this past me.
He should be 1.5. No, at some point it does come down to just making sure everyone in the locker room is happy with each other.
Which coach would be the best dad in the NBA?
Steve Kerr.
You reckon Steve?
I'm biased.
We can just ask Nick.
Absolutely absurd. He called his kid Nick.
It is absurd. But seriously, you can't tell me that you don't think that'd be Monty Williams.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of dads in the NBA.
There's a few dads in the NBA, but some of them would be like bad dads. Like Jason Kidd, bad dad.
Tibbs, bad dad. James Borrego, don't even get me started. He's not dropping you off for soccer training.
Nah. James Borrego is like sleeping with your teacher.
Is he still a coach yet?
He's not, because Charlotte, in a real is this a simulation move? The simulation's just like ticking over on repeat. Charlotte have hired Steve Clifford to be their head coach.
Yeah, also bad father.
Yes,
I mean, I should say I'm not reporting anything to the aggregators.
But definitely he gives the vibes. You know what, I just want to say, like, I'm just going to do some introspection here quickly. My favourite footy team, the Brisbane Lions, are playing tonight. It's Thursday the 1st of September. That's Wednesday the 31st of August for our American listeners.
Number 1 rule of podcasting, don't date your episodes.
Mate, in an hour, less than an hour, I'm going to be at the pub watching the footy. Who's the coach of the Brisbane Lions?
Michael Voss.
Fags. Chris Fagan, who's universally acknowledged as like the dad of the AFL coaching circle.
Really?
To the point where some of the players, including Lockie Chocky Neal, call him Father Fags. Because he just gives dad vibes. So to analyse...
I don't watch any footy.
To analyse myself slightly here, Monty Williams is the coach of my favourite basketball team. Chris Fagan is the coach of my favourite footy team. Is there a trend here that I'm drawn to teams with father-like figures at the helm? And is this something that stems from my own lack of a father figure in my own life?
Fuck.
My dad doesn't listen to this podcast, so there's no ramifications for saying anything.
Your dad's a nice guy, isn't he?
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah, shook his hand.
Yeah.
Who's coached the Carolina Panthers?
No, don't care. We're off that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, man.
Oh, we're off NFL altogether.
No, not altogether, but mostly. Who's the coach of Chelsea Football Club?
He's a
Thomas
nonce.
Tuchel.
He's a nonce.
He is not dad material.
Yeah, he's a nonce.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. We're a little bit off the way. The next question was, which team had the worst off-season? So 6 votes were cast for the Dallas Mavericks. Second was 3 votes to the Charlotte Hornets, which is, they had a shocking offseason, but it is sort of out of their hands. So, yeah.
Well, not necessarily. They're the platonic ideal in a world where they weren't employing
Bad people.
Employing like domestic abusers,
Yeah.
is that they gave said domestic abuser like a huge amount of money that he potentially isn't worth. So we would have then been panning that for a different reason. But obviously the other stuff is out of their control. Although
Kenny Atkinson,
it's not really out of their control in terms of like, I don't know, if you want to take an above the treetops, that's some corporate lingo for you. An above the treetops view, you might be able to, a reasonable person might make the case that getting rid of altogether the guy who violently beat his partner in front of their children from the roster might be like a net positive.
and Cody Martin's going to start at the 3 next year.
Yeah.
1 vote was cast for the Denver Nuggets, which you can read my article on why they might think that at nuglove.com, which was posted yesterday. 1 vote was cast for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Not a fan of Rudy Gobert. I think Lucas Petridis had a vote in this. Scout for the Washington Wizards. And 1 vote for the Portland Trailblazers, which is, the idea was, now the anonymous quote was that, what are they doing? They're a head-scratching team. What are they competing for? At least you acknowledge that they're competing.
I'm on that vibe. So surely it's got to be the Ricks had the worst offseason.
Huh?
The Ricks.
The Ricks?
Yeah.
What's that?
The Mavericks.
Yeah, the Ricks had the worst offseason. I mean, just, yeah, Christian Wood as
more like Christian Wolf.
Wolf. Don't get that one.
Well, because you go wolf when something's bad.
No, I'm literally not a dog.
Well, it's time for debate after that response, but...
and then, yeah, giving JaVale McGee, 3 years at, like, the full MLA?
Yeah, 3 years, $19.1 million off the top of the dome. I'm going to fact check myself on Spot Track.
In the past week, I've watched Game 7 between the Phoenix Suns and the Dallas Mavericks twice, because I love watching it. I love watching it thinking, Dante's eventually going to watch this for a second time.
No, I'm actually not.
You will.
It's actually not happening.
Dante,
Sean, it's not happening.
Well, one day we're going to be having a night out. We're going to come home and we'll be like, oh, let's put some YouTube on. Like, oh, boys, let's get around. Yeah, let's watch Clay Thompson.
Well, this is already falling off the rails because what makes you think that one day I'm coming home from a night out being like, let's put some YouTube on?
To be fair, I do that most weekends.
Yeah, well, to be fair, you've absolutely grossly misrepresented it.
Clay Thompson, 37 points.
Slightly, it's 17.2 for JaVale McGee.
Okay.
And I'm just going to interrupt you again on that specific topic.
I can't interrupt me if I'm not talking.
I am... more so than I think any other, or more so than many other sports fans I've encountered in my life, I very much believe that if you're going to be there for the ups, you've got to be there for the downs. Maybe it's the being raised Catholic in me, but I have something of like a penitential approach to sports. Like, if you really want to enjoy your team winning the Champions League, you have to slog through seasons of them finishing 10th. You know?
And you have to also watch them lose in Game 7 by 40 points.
And unfortunately, that's my... Like, I'm watching every game. My team in footy is getting blown out by 10 goals. I'm watching it. If my team's losing 5-0, I'm watching it. If my basketball team is losing by 40 points, I'm watching it. That's me as a person, as a sports fan. And you know what? I didn't watch the end of it. That Game 7, I just said to myself, enough's enough, and with about 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I turned it off. So I hope that illustrates truly how diabolical that performance was for even me, of all people who would just sit there and watch it to suffer, and to tick that box that I've suffered, so it's going to be that much sweeter when we eventually prevail. I just left. So, no, I won't ever watch it again.
Well, it was such a good game, because, like... Spencer Dinwiddie was hitting some crazy shots.
Sick.
And then Luka had that one where like he had just crossed over Cam Slam Johnson, and then he nailed it, and then he held it, and he hung his arms behind his legs, and he just grunted, and the crowd was dead silent.
Yeah.
And every time I rewatch it, I just think about you watching it, and then they flash back to the Mavericks watch party at the American Airlines Center. That's not the one. And then there's just all these these bros drinking 2 cans of Bud Light. And I imagine you having to watch that after seeing a back-breaking 3 for the 5th time in a row.
Me sitting on my couch watching it on my laptop. All right, enough of that nonsense. and
we can go through this next topic quick because we're also going to start an embargo on this as well.
Yeah. So Russell Westbrook, he's still on the Lakers, and this week, Jeannie Buss, when talking to Sam Amick of The Athletic, came out and said Russell Westbrook was our best player last year. And I'm just going to put it out there right now. Shut up. Shut up. Why are you saying this when LeBron James is on your team and has quite firmly aligned himself as a factional enemy of Russell Westbrook? LeBron clearly wants Russell Westbrook off the team, and so the way that the Jeannie Buss has chosen to go around this. Also, owners giving interviews, just don't.
Well, I'm just trying to... Here it is. This is the title of the article. And also, if Jeannie Buss gives you an article to write for, Lakers get clicks, it doesn't rhyme.
No,
they still do.
Sam Amick is blameless here. Sam Amick's just going to do it.
Well, here's the title. Jeannie Buss Unplugged. On the Lakers' power structure, LeBron, Westbrook, and more.
You know what I would say? Plug her back in. Plug her back in.
That's a good chime. It's so what we actually want to talk about here is not the fact that she gave a fucking absurd quote. We just want to talk about the fact that Russell Westbrook has been trying. They've been trying to trade him for months, and they've quickly realised, fuck, we can't. We shouldn't have given up multiple good assets to get him in the first place. And congratulations, Tommy Shepard. You will actually go down in history as making one of the greatest trades of all time,
definitely.
Just because the Lakers were desperate. But look, they've faced their fate. What's the saying? I feel like I'm in Peep Show coming up with the wrong sayings. they're facing...
Chance would be a fine thing.
Man with a van. Both the two of us, we could be men with Ven.
Oh, that's one of the all-time greats.
They've just realised that, oh shit, we're actually stuck with him. So we have to put a positive spin on this and be like, okay, we are stuck with him. Let's quickly try and undo all the bad work we just did where LeBron didn't talk to him at Summer League. So let's fucking plug Jeannie Buss in and get her to say that it's his favourite player. And then Darvin Ham came out. There's a quote via Mark Stein that Darvin Ham is determined to carve out a new role for Russell Westbrook. And then there's another thing where he said that he doesn't want to bench Russell Westbrook. He doesn't want to see him as a backup player because he wants to try and make it work. And then there's
you don't want to bench your most expensive player who's earning $50 million. Oh, that's pretty interesting.
And then obviously trading for Patrick Beverley, everyone's like, oh, is he going to take over his role? Especially because the two of them hate each other for reasons we discussed last week. But even Russ's, the Lakers PR team sitting there with a gun to his back being like, say the right thing.
The problem with all this though is that this...
we can all see through it.
No, but not only is it stupid and nonsensical and doesn't make sense, but this also positions the Lakers as wrongdoers here. Whereas when Darvin Ham got hired months ago, he initially said, I want Russell Westbrook to commit to being the point guard. I want him to commit to playing defense. I want him to be a part of the team. The subtext of that is take a smaller role, focus on the things that you can improve on, that you can work on. You're not 2016-17 Russ anymore. You need to be the Russ we need you to be, but we want you. And to that, have you heard any rumours, scuttlebutt, New York media style news, in inverted commas, about Russell Westbrook being prepared to accept a smaller role? No. The only thing that's come from the Russell Westbrook side is that we found out that his agent was telling him to accept a smaller role, and so he fired his agent. So all of this being man, we really want Russ to be part of the team. We want to give him a prominent role. Them trying to mend the relationship. A, you're stinky. And B, we've seen, even if this all wasn't so transparent and it all worked and Russell Westbrook accepts the olive branch you're extending and takes the real role you're offering him, then what do you have? You have the 2021-2022 Los Angeles Lakers, which was bad. So, what this guy is with a real role on the team. You just saw it.
I really wish they didn't win the 2020 title because everything at the end of the day is excusable. Because, like, yes, I want to see LeBron win. I want LeBron to win as many titles as possible. But it's all excusable now because they could just be a dumpster fire till 2029 and it doesn't matter because they won and banners fly forever. And fuck, it's annoying. Because, like, you know, I'm spoiled. I get to watch a lot of titles for the Golden State Warriors. But surely the Phoenix Suns winning, like, over 100 games in 2 years deserve a title more than the Lakers do. Regular season games,
especially because the bubble was such like a strange time and place where it really kind of felt like more than usual you could just like rock up and play 16 great games and like get out of there, which is not usually the case. Like the Nuggets of the last 3 seasons like aren't really just rocking up and playing 16 great games and getting out of there. Like there'll be a team that's playing 16 greater games, whereas in the bubble it was like yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Go off, King. Also, like, LeBron was awesome. Davis was awesome. And it was...
they deserve it. But it's like, now they're just acting like a bunch of dick cheats.
The difference is, like, LeBron was, you know, like, LeBron was LeBron. Davis was actually awesome versus the last 2 seasons where he's been, like, not as awesome / not awesome at all. And the roster was actually well constructed. There were, like, great role players, specifically
the ones they gave up
catered to what they needed. Yeah, and they either gave them up for us or gave them up for nothing in the case of Caruso. So yeah, last season's roster was like a Frankenstein's monster of terrible role players plus underperforming and aging superstars.
Well, yeah. So we've just talked about 2 topics we're not going to talk about until something happens.
Yeah. Westbrook's embargoed. Yeah, fully fucking
until he actually gets traded.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good pod. Should we?
That was a great pod. Should we do one of these ones we were practicing before? One of the handshakes we were practicing right next to the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crisp as.
It's weird because at your school you did these ones and grab that.
Yeah.
But where I'm from.
Yeah.
Just do those ones with the knuckles.
Yeah. We didn't. I don't necessarily think I picked up from school. I think I just picked up from the streets. But you know, it's kind of how I roll. So,
God, we have a laugh.
Anyway, loving the off season, loving the dog days of the off season. Training camp's just around the corner, so we'll be ramping up our podcasting content in the coming weeks. In about 10 days' time, we have another article coming from Lulu PP, friend of the pod and Deep 2 contributor Lucas Petridis. Will be posting his second article about the WNBA playoffs, so stay tuned for that. WNBA playoffs ongoing, so if you're missing your basketball fix...
And it's like less than $20 to get the pass.
Tune in.
Dante, I'll speak to you next time. We were over the moon when we first heard that the NBA was going to be televised on Australian free-to-air TV in the 2019-20 season. It didn't exactly go swimmingly with the nasty cough halting the season and games getting cancelled left, right and centre, but it was a huge step and an exciting one for basketball fans all across the country.
Better yet, it wasn't a commercial channel cashing in on some basketball nerds like us. It was SBS, one of our public broadcasters. Unfortunately, the NBA wasn't the only thing SBS was pushing last season. They also ran advertisements from Sportsbet, Ladbrokes, Bet365, BetEasy, and Neds, some of the biggest sports betting companies in Australia.
In a one step forwards, 2 steps backwards move, SBS has dropped the ball here. As a public broadcaster, SBS plays a key role in providing relevant, culturally appropriate health information to local communities. The last thing SBS should be doing is offering a platform for gambling companies during the most financially unstable time in recent memory.
This past year, men aged 18 to 24 made up 79% of new gambling account holders, with increased median spending and frequency of bets. This is the last thing we should be spending our money on given the financial uncertainty that comes with the pandemic. During COVID lockdowns, wagering companies spent more money on advertising and incentives to gamble, and it worked. SBS needs to hear from viewers that gambling ad revenue isn't worth the harm it causes. Call on the SBS chair, George Savitas, to put community health ahead of gambling revenue by signing the petition at www.endgamblingads.org.au/get gambling off SBS with hyphens in between.